The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Tastes just like candy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ask for Candy, where we talk about healing, self-care, love, sex, relationships, and what it takes to be amazing on the daily. Who I am is Candace Harper, lovecoach.com, and my purpose with this podcast is to create healthy romantic relationships all around the world through self-love, soul connections, and sweetness. But before we get to that, we are here with our production partner, Solivity Magazine, my Brian, who is the editor-in-chief. What's up, Brian?
What's up, girl?
How are you, honey?
I am great. This is like a hell of a Wednesday.
It's a hell of a...
We're going to have a good time today.
We're going to have a good time today. It's a hell of a Wednesday, a hell of a wellness Wednesday, because, you know, we're always about wellness, right? And we're coming back with part 2 of last week's topic of part 1, which I'm going to get to that in a second. But just so everybody knows, especially if you're tuning in brand new, we are live every Wednesday here on social media at 7 o'clock. You can also watch us at solivity.com on Solivity TV. And you can subscribe to Solivity Magazine on YouTube so that you can be alerted whenever we go live, because you can be watching us on YouTube as well. And you can subscribe to Anchor for our audio broadcast, also iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts for just the audio. And you can email me at askforcandypodcast@gmail.com if you want to leave comments or ask questions. You know, sometimes you give me ideas for topics, all that good stuff. You know what, Brian?
What's up?
I gotta stop and say, I really feel a lot of excitement and gratitude around our venture. And we've been doing it for 9 weeks now? 9 weeks?
I know, it just seems like yesterday when we started up.
It's like a blink of an eye. And I already feel like, you know, we're in the groove of things. It's like our Wednesday thing.
And it's just gonna get better with time.
Okay. And we're musical. Right? We're moving on into the fall. We've now transitioned seasons. So you know that, you know, you've got good consistency going when you start transitioning seasons, right? So.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I feel good about that.
Absolutely.
So for anybody who's joining new, who's never been with us before, for almost 9 years, I have been a relationship coach, a workshop facilitator, and now a professional matchmaker with Talkified dating service. And so this is me living into my purpose, the purpose of loving myself unconditionally and inspiring others to do the same, using our romantic lives as a portal, an inspiration, a catalyst to our highest possible self. That's what we're all about here. And matchmaking and relationship coaching are my zone of genius. And the best part about it is that week to week, I get to grow and learn as I interact with hundreds of people around the most intimate part of their lives. And I get to take people on their journey from the caterpillar to the butterfly, from unhappy with their love lives to ecstatic. I get to teach people how to get out of their own way and tap into love as a limitless resource. And most importantly, I get to be a part of what supports healthy beginnings and sustainably healthy relationships. I get to be the cause of self-love, soul connections, and sweetness, which is why we do this podcast. So that we can come on and have conversations about that stuff, and we can have some transformation in the world around what happens with love. And, you know, what people's expectations are around love and why so many of us sabotage ourselves when it comes to love, whether we're in or out of a relationship. So I want you to stick around tonight, because tonight, Brian, I'm going to be very efficient with time, and we are going to get to the matchmaker moment.
Yeah, you gotta do it. We missed it last week.
We missed it last week. It's, you know, I went long. We had a lot to deep dive into. There was a lot to delve into. So I feel like this week I owe it to everybody to have a matchmaker moment. So stick around for that, because I have an amazing client to talk about. But tonight's topic, Matchmaker Secrets Part 2. I'm going to share with you the exact questions that I asked to find out if you might be a match for my client. And for Part 2, we're going to talk about the questions that I asked the ladies. And we're also going to...
You know I'm waiting for this one.
Right? Are you excited for this one?
Yeah.
Do you have like a crew, Brian, where it's like, your guy friends where there's a combination of both single and married? Or do you mainly hang out with married guys?
Typically, yeah. There's like a little mix going on.
You have a mixture. Okay. Do you, like, when you sit around and like, do you guys ever sit around and talk about relationships? Do you talk about like...
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially if someone's going through something.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Do y'all get, I always wonder, I always want to be a fly on the wall for men's conversations. Do y'all get deep with this kind of stuff? Do you ask each other like, how should I be on a date and all of that stuff? Like, do the single ones ask you questions like that?
Not that specific question, because most guys don't want to believe that they're not like super fly when they
right? Men always want to believe they already got it together, right?
Exactly.
Right. I totally get that. I often wonder, like with men, whether they get into a place of the inquisition about, am I doing it right? Like the second guessing themselves and things like that, and how they express it. Because I feel like that's a human thing. But I feel like maybe men don't normally have safe spaces to do that often, where they're like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
That is very true.
Yeah. I totally get that. So, I mean, this conversation tonight, I'm very present, and I won't say cautious, because I don't mind if a man were to ask me my advice, I don't mind sharing it, but I do have a little trepidation around being like, because I don't even like it when I see women do it with men, or I see men do it with women, like the genders telling each other how they need to be.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't, there's something about that kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. Like, I feel like, as a mentor and a coach, I like mentoring and coaching women because that's what my experience is, right? Is as a woman.
Okay.
And I also feel, that my experience, my study, and I feel like a strong sense of being able to form an opinion. Now, I'm not saying that you can't advise or teach because you're two different genders. But when you see people doing content online, like, I don't know if you saw recently, there's that girl, Tommy Lahren. Tommy Lahren recently did this video where she was like taking men to task. Like, men are trash. This is how you have to date. This is what you should be doing. Like, she was doing that sort of finger wagging thing.
Yeah.
And then you see all those guys who do like MGTOW and stuff like that. And those guys who like are really vitriolic when it comes to women.
Yeah, they all need to have several seats.
Right? So I'm like, I want to be, it's not helping anybody. And I always want to be careful about, giving advice around what you should do, when I'm speaking to other genders, because I feel like, there's a fine line that you walk between giving helpful information and actually finger wagging and saying, because I don't mind finger wagging with women sometimes. Because I can finger wag myself, like I know I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking to them, but I feel like with men, I'm a little more careful. And I say all of that just to set up tonight's topic around, the questions to ask women. Now, I also think that it is important that men are open to the possibility that there are, like, I think men are better vetters, generally speaking. I think that once men decide they want to have a relationship, they want to get married, they're much better. I always say they shop women like you'd shop for fruit, right? Like, squeeze, oh, not ready. Squeeze, oh, that one's right. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's how men generally approach getting into a relationship. Right? So I don't think that they need necessarily as much instruction as far as that is concerned. But I think, when we go into that conversation of how do you create intimacy and really get to know someone, if you really want to get to know them, these are the questions that you would ask. And I know, with my matchmaking clients, a lot of times with men, what causes them to want to get to know a woman better is what she looks like, generally speaking. And then if they get through the layers and they like, what they like more and more, then they continue on. So that's what these questions are about supporting, is unpacking and unpeeling those layers after you already know that you like her boobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way we should do it. I mean, you did I remember the show we did on dating, which everybody should go back and watch, actually.
Thank you, honey.
Where that was kind of like the process, right? Where
Yeah.
you're unpacking and you're kind of like peeling back those layers one by one.
Yeah. And that does take time, and it does take a willingness. And I know that for men, oftentimes the willingness comes from the physical attraction. And so I guess there's also partly an invitation to be a little open even when someone's not immediately physically attractive.
Yeah. That's the growing part for men.
Yeah. And that is always the invitation. And, I think women deal with that as well. But I think for men, I think more often women will look past and see. Whereas with men, it's like, nope, I don't want to have sex with her. I don't need to get to know her any further than that. Right? If I don't want to see her naked, I don't need to peel any other layers.
That is true.
Right? So there's that invitation too, to consider like how these questions might actually inspire wanting to see someone naked, because you get to see them from the inside out rather than the outside in. I'm not telling you how to be. I'm just offering something for those of you who want to be in a relationship, want to be married, all that good stuff. So as I mentioned last week, but it bears repeating, I spend a lot of my days interviewing people to find out if they might be a match for my people, my clients. I'm a mother hen. These are my charges. I feel very responsible for their experience in a lot of ways. And you might even say that I predate the people, right? So I mentioned last week that, I'm basically first dating all day long. That's kind of my job as a matchmaker. And it's a blast. I love it. There's zero pressure because my goal is to match them with someone else. I'm not worried about matching them with me. So, I get to really enjoy it and luxuriate in it and, savor it and have fun with it and just get to know people on a whole nother level. And so my idea here is, what if we actually allow ourselves to do that with dating, even though it does feel pressureful sometimes, even though it does feel there's expectation involved, even though we're there for a reason, oftentimes. What if we allowed ourselves to just let it be juicy and full and fun without any expectation? And that's also what these questions require. Because in the end, we all want to be loved and accepted for exactly who we are, right? So
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we want to foster. It's like, how do we get to that where we allow ourselves to just have fun and enjoy and love each other? I talked about that a lot last week as well. So those of you who listen regularly also know that I often talk about my matchmaker algorithm. So the algorithm is the 3 points I'm trying to get with each match is core values, lifestyle, and physical attraction. So that's what I'm looking to match up, because I know that if I can match those 3 things, at the very least, you'll have a semi-good conversation. You'll be able to spend a level of quality time with each other if you allow it. So that's the second part of it. One thing that I find with my men is that, like I said, if they don't want to take off the person's clothes, they tend to not want to allow it. And with the women, if they don't think he doesn't make enough money, or they've made some other kind of value judgment in that way, they don't want to allow it. So this is about allowance. This is about, letting yourself go ahead and get into it and get to know a person, regardless of whether they're going to be that thing that you want them to be or not, because there's no way of knowing that until you get to know them. It's like a catch-22. It's like a paradigm wrapped in an enigma.
Oof.
So this week, I'm going to share with you the questions that I ask women when I'm screening them. They're slightly different than the questions that I ask men, and I'll tell you why. Regardless of gender preference or sexual orientation, there are certain things that are generally inherent in the way that men and women communicate. So different questions will invite different kinds of reactions depending on the gender. And, when I'm looking to find out about core values, lifestyle, and physical attraction, I know certain questions will get that out of men and certain other questions will get that out of women. So that's why there's a difference. There's no, disparity. It's not like a unequal thing. It's just, there's a different way that we think. It's a combination of our biology, how we're culturally conditioned, our perspectives based on what we experience in our bodies as our genders. So, for instance, what a man might hear as a joke, a woman might hear as an insult. What a woman might take as a kind compliment, a man might take as an invitation to get naked. Do you know, like we perceive things, we perceive things very differently because of our genders and our gender experience. So that's why there is a difference in the questions. So for those of you who are going to be like commenting or, inboxing me or DMing me talking about, it's misogynistic to have the questions be this and, whatever, like you can go ahead and pass me with that, because that's the reason that I ask the different questions. We think differently, we perceive differently just based on what our experience is. And so, like, for instance, last week I shared that one of the questions that I ask men is, what is your relationship with money? So I also described how when asking a man that question, he will most often share answers that get to the heart of how he views himself as a man. Like, what is his relationship with himself? What does he value? Whether or not he feels like he's ready for a relationship. And most often, whether he truly loves himself. Like, you can ask a man a question like his relationship with money, and you can get all of that information out of them. Don't you think so, Brian?
Yeah, I think given the right circumstance, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think it goes to what you were saying before. You got to get to know somebody.
Yeah, no, totally.
You just can't go from 0 to 100. What's your bank account?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. The asking them about their relationship with money is not like, if you go to the bank account and how much and, how much you make, how much you have, all that stuff, you're going to shut it down. Like, you're going to completely shut it down. And, for any man that's not looking to buy you or, is not looking to be a sugar daddy, that's going to be very off-putting. And even if he is looking to be a sugar daddy, it's probably going to be off-putting. So you want that question to be about, like, how do you view it? What is your relationship? So that you can then get to know those things. But I say all of that to say, I don't ask women that, because what I'm looking for with that question is his emotional landscape with himself. But if I ask him, if I were to say, what is your emotional landscape with yourself? It's most often, yeah.
What you talking about?
Exactly. It's going to take him off into all kinds of directions while he's like working it out. Like, what do you mean? Not always, I don't want to generalize, but for the most part, if you ask a man that question, he's going to like really have to then think about it, because he's not walking around thinking about it like women do. We walk around thinking about stuff like that. So with women, I can simply ask, how do you describe your relationship with yourself? And I will get the entire trajectory of her self-perception and its evolution, because it's just how we're wired. Like, you ask a woman how she feels about herself, and she can write you a book immediately, because for the most part, generally speaking, we walk around thinking about those sorts of things. So that's just an illustration of why the questions that I ask men are different than the questions that I ask women, but the ultimate goal is the same. The ultimate information that I'm trying to glean is the same, right? So I also illustrated last week how important it is to be able to set up a safety bubble with the people that I'm screening, and how to set up a conversational safety bubble with a man. So now, we want to also have a safety bubble for a woman. And so just to recap, it's the same stuff. So like I said, as the matchmaker, I get to present it. I get to say, I have a client and, I have a list of questions. There's no right or wrong answers. I get to say all of that stuff. So I set it up and they know that they can say what they need to say. So just to recap how you create a safety bubble before we go into the questions. Leave your judgy perfectionist critic at home. And this I say to the men as well, because I think that men, even though you might judge different things, can be just as judgy and perfectionistic as women can be, especially when it comes to physical looks and things like that. So if you can leave that at home, I'm not saying go against your biology. I'm not saying that, the inclination to think with the little head is wrong. I'm not saying give up your manhood. All I'm saying is try on what it would feel like to allow yourself to just get past that enough to know someone as a human being. Just to try it out. And that's only if you're relationship minded, right? I'm not saying, oh, forget that you want to be sexually attracted to that person, because sexual attraction is a very important thing. But I noticed that with a lot of my male clients, they get so caught up in it and the judgment is so quick that they miss out on women who actually that they have that inner beauty, that inner glow. And there are men who get that. So I say this knowing that there are men who say, when I ask them about the physical appearance question, they will say the energy that a woman has, how easily she smiles, if she laughs, if she's compelling in her conversation, like to them, that is beautiful, and the woman will look more beautiful to them. But those are usually mature men, right? They're men who have like some sort of emotional wisdom. So the invitation is, I'm not, for the younger guys, like if you're still thinking, I can't even talk to her if she doesn't look a certain way, like that can be a sabotage to an ultimate goal of wanting to have a long-term relationship that works, a loving relationship. So safety bubble, leave your judgy perfectionist at home, listen actively. Don't just wait to talk, like be in an active listening space. Not just holding on to what your ideas, what you're trying to get across, just actually hearing what is being said. Any inclination to emotionally attach too quickly. So men do this too. I think women a lot of times get accused of being, psycho and crazy because it's like we get emotionally attached very quickly. But I think there's a certain contingent of men who, when they find a woman physically attractive, they tend to ignore a lot of the things that would indicate to them that that's all she's coming with, because they get caught up in that physical attraction. And those of you guys out there who've ever been in a relationship where you're like, how in the world did I get here? You know what I'm talking about. Brian, have you ever been in a relationship like that?
I don't know what you're talking
about. Where you're like, damn, she was so fine that first day. And then there you are 2 years later. And you're like, what happens?
What's the word? What's the whole statement? I cannot confirm nor deny this is that date.
I got you. You can't tell all your business. Your wife might be listening. She might be like, who is it? Who was it?
Oh, no, she was fine the next day.
Yeah.
And the day after, more beautiful.
Yeah, yes, of course. Of course. That's true with Sasha. That's the one you married. But, like you think about boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. And I think it does often happen for men, at least, from talking to them, where, they really get smitten with somebody, and then all the horrific things about that person start to surprise them, and then the relationship ends up breaking down. But that's why the invitation is to try to not instantly get so smitten by those outside things. And I'm not purposely pointing to my boobs, but you know what I mean? Try not to get so sucked in by those physical things. Allow the getting to know. So yes, creating the safety bubble, authentically allow them the space to be who they are, knowing that it won't have any effect on your life unless you are actually a match for each other. I think men are a little better at this because men don't, they don't tend to try to force something, right? So usually if they're on a date with somebody, even if they don't really like them that much, they're not looking to try to change them into anything. I think generally speaking, men are a little quicker to accept that somebody is who they are, whereas generally speaking, women will want to try to mold, change, affect them to be a little bit different. Also, generate the experience you want to have rather than hoping that person is going to spark your positive emotions. So another thing that I think is biologically inherent in men is to show someone a good time, which I think is great. But and I think it's good to heed that inclination. Like instead of sitting back and being like, she's got to entertain me, she's got to come with this, come with that. Like if you generate the experience you want to have, you're creating a safety bubble for somebody to be themselves, and you can get to know that woman. Like you're opening up the portal, the safety bubble, so that they can do that. And then the last, just to recap, is when you're asking the questions, obviously fit them into the conversation. You're not just going to run them down like a checklist. You're not doing a job interview. In a way you are, sort of, but not really, because dating is really just about getting to know people and seeing what works and letting it be amorphous and organic and, seeing who you want to see more often and letting yourself be attracted to what you're attracted to and letting it lead you into spending more time with that person. And, a lot of times we think that it's like, this person works, that person works, this person works, that person works. I'm not going to bother, but if you see good things in a person, if you see worthwhile things in a person, the whole reason to ask these questions, create this safety bubble, is to see what's possible. There's no, I don't know. I feel like we get so caught up in wanting to control it and chess piece people in and out of our lives. And there's just so much more room for, what could be possible when we just go with the flow, like just let it flow. Now, I know, generally speaking, that with men, this is easier. And it's usually much more emotional thing for women, at least with clients that I've dealt with and in the matchmaking. But I also feel like it just bears acknowledging, right? That we just don't allow ourselves enough time to get to know each other. We don't allow ourselves the investment to get to know each other. We're so quick to cut each other off, cut dates short, just not want to be engaged with each other because there's those certain external things that just aren't there right away. So that's what this whole conversation is about. How do we get past that so that all the single people that are out here walking around thinking that there's no good people to date and that dating sucks and, that it's not worthwhile, how do we change that? How do we transform that, right? It takes a willingness to transform it. So creating the safety bubble for a woman to ask the questions. If you really want to get to know know a woman through the questions that you asked her, she has to feel like she's not going to get advised, lectured, or shamed. Just like, no one wants to feel like they're being advised, lectured, or shamed in whatever they're going to share. She has to feel like she's not going to be told she's wrong. No one likes to be told that they are wrong about whatever their answers are or whatever they have to say. Women in particular tend to want to defend or go into masculine energy and fight to be right. If you tell a woman she's wrong, often she will want to fight to be right. And that is a very general statement because there are women who are emotionally intelligent and evolved and know how to control that inclination. But this is what we trigger in each other when we're not willing to allow a person to be who they are. Men tend to shut down and go into their feminine energy and they just ignore it. If they don't care for being told that they're wrong, if they don't care for your disagreement, they tend to shut down emotionally, whereas women tend to go into like masculine energy, fight mode, and it doesn't work. And if you've ever been on a date with someone, especially an early date or a first date where you disagreed about something and you found yourselves like going head to head, you know that you have not created a safety bubble. So that's what we're talking about here. Creating a safety bubble for a woman, just like you'd create a safety bubble for a man. Now, I want to get into the questions, but Brian, I feel like we should take a little commercial break. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we can take a little break.
Yeah.
Quick break,
Okay.
And then get people warmed up for the questions when we come back.
Yes, I want y'all to get ready, think about it, and I also want you to feel free to engage because I'm going to share the questions, but maybe you have some questions too that you ask that have been effective where you've learned stuff about people or some thoughts, right? So they might have some thoughts on the questions, things like that. So we'll take a little break and come back and talk about what questions to ask the ladies if you really want to get to know who she is on a first date.
And we're back.
What's up, everybody? So we are talking about the questions to ask a woman if you want to get to know her better on a first date, a second date, a third date, wherever you choose. Matchmaker Secrets. These are the questions that I actually use to screen women for my male clients or my women clients who date women. So these questions, like I said, I set them up. I create the matchmaker safety bubble. And right before the break, we talked about you setting up your own dating safety bubble so that you can ask these questions and ask them in a way that causes a person to want to be really sharing so you can kind of get to know who they are and what's really going on the inside, if that's what you're curious about. I always assume everybody wants a relationship, Brian, but I know that there are people out there who just want casual sex.
Yes, this is true. There's
right?
many of them out there.
Yes, and
But I think though too that maybe that in part is like the prelude to it. I mean, because we only grow when we're in a relationship with someone that's more than like a one night stand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just there. You have to grow. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with that. I think the growth can happen. The growth should be happening always. But yes, I agree as far as like, being in practice and allowing ourselves to be okay with wanting to be in a relationship and wanting to ultimately be committed. Right? I was going to say monogamous, but I know there's some people who are like, I guess polyamorous. Can you be monogamous and polyamorous? Is that monogamy if you're like committed to 3 people? And everybody knows and you've all agreed?
I don't know if that is absolutely true or not.
Right? Does that make it monogamous? But I guess what I'm saying is that, it is okay to be a human being who ultimately wants to be committed, going through some sort of area, phase, journey in your life where commitment is not the priority.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And you should be open and honest about that too.
Exactly. As long as you're approaching it with openness and honesty. And I want to give a nod to those people because specifically these questions that I'm talking about are about creating real intimacy, real emotional intimacy with someone. So if you're someone who's just out there dating casually and you're not ready to think about the long game of being committed to someone, these questions could get you in trouble because you ask these questions and then a person, especially if they share themselves authentically, they foster connection. They foster a bond with that person. Like,
this ain't no tricking now.
Exactly. And so all the people, even like when I'm screening for matchmaking, like I've made so many friends. I've bonded with so many people that I screen. Because of the number of people that I screen, it would be impossible for me to have close relationships with all of them. But I can't think of a single one where I didn't feel like there wasn't some level of momentary human bonding because there was that intimacy being shared, like that talking about oneself and having someone else hear and accept it. So I say all of that to say, for those of you who are not commitment minded and not quite ready to go there, these questions might be a little too hot to handle.
Uh-oh.
Right? They may not be.
But keep on watching.
Yes, but keep on watching. But they might not be the direction you want to go if you're casual. I want to really, really focus in on the people who want to have a commitment. Like these are for people who, you're out there and you want to make it happen, and people who are in a relationship and maybe it's gone stagnant or it's getting stale, because these questions you can be asking throughout your relationship. Right? Or, forming them in different ways. So let's get started. I'm like stalling out on the questions. I need to go ahead, right? Let's get into it. So the first question that is great to ask a woman, and I mentioned it earlier, how do you describe your relationship with yourself? That's a great question to ask a woman because she will tell you so much, especially if you have created a safety bubble for her, if she feels like she can really talk about who she is without being judged. She will go in, and depending on her age, most women will talk about sort of their evolution of self-love and how they came about it through growth, age, wisdom, and experience. Like an older woman, she'll always say that, I went through a transition or a transformation around it, and now I love myself more. So one of the ways that I like to dig a little deeper, just to really see if that's just conversation or if that's really what's going on, is I'll say, well, how do you talk to yourself in your head? Like, what is your inner dialogue like? Are you a perfectionist? Are you a nurturer? Or somewhere in between? And the reason to ask that question is because it speaks volumes about how she treats other people. Because we treat other people the way that we treat ourselves. So if I'm a perfectionist and I'm really hard on myself and I'm always giving myself a hard time, and you can always tell those people because they're so hard on other people. They're so particular about how jobs are done. They have a million different critiques for things. They have a lot of judgment. They have a lot of expectation. They tend to be parents who are very strict with very lofty expectations. So, she'll say, you say, how do you talk to yourself in your head? Are you a perfectionist? And a lot of times women who feel like, oh, yes, I've done that evolution, I really do love myself. You ask them that question and they'll say, well, yeah, I am a perfectionist, which completely contradicts the idea that I love myself. So here's the thing about perfectionism. It is not self-loving by any stretch of the imagination. And people think that it is because they think that it's their way of pushing themselves, motivating themselves to be better. They think that they're loving themselves by, once I get that job and my expectation is that I live to this standard and that I do this and do that. And, setting all of those like mile markers for where they need to get to, which they rarely ever let themselves get to. They rarely ever let themselves sit in the happiness of it. But when someone is a perfectionist and a self-proclaimed perfectionist, what they're saying is that I haven't gotten there. I haven't gotten to that place of loving self-acceptance. I struggle with it. I give myself a hard time. And when you get to know me, I'm going to give you a hard time too.
Damn.
That's what they're telling you. Wow. And here's the thing. It's not that they can never change. It's not that it can never. I mean, I'm a reformed perfectionist myself. Someone who's always so hard on myself and always so hard on people in my life. I'm sure that I could gather together some people who would testify. But so it's possible to have an evolution. But if someone tells you that they're a perfectionist, don't believe them that they love themselves. Don't believe them on that. And it's very important that if you're looking to be in a relationship with somebody, that they have self-love, that they do love themselves. Now, with that said, there's a lot of married perfectionists. So it's not like it's impossible, right? It's not like it makes it impossible to get into a relationship. You can definitely get into a relationship with a perfectionist, but there will be a lot to work on when you get into a relationship with a perfectionist. And as things unfold, there's going to be a lot of evolution that you have to go through together. So ideally, you would want them to say, I'm a nurturer with myself. I forgive myself. I love myself. I let myself make mistakes. And even though I have, certain things that I want to achieve, I'm very loving about the journey and how long it's going to take to get there. You want somebody who's like, I give myself, I feed myself. I love myself through it. Like they're treating themselves like if they were, raising their own themselves at 5 years old, right? So let's say you had a child with this person. You want somebody who is going to who's already treating themselves the way that they would treat your child. Right? Does that make sense? Like
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
Yeah, that nurturing thing, how I treat myself is how I treat my inner child, my inner mistake maker, my inner grower. And that's how I would treat my child. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So that's a question that you definitely want, especially if you're marriage minded, especially if you're long-term relationship minded. You always want to ask, how do you describe your relationship with yourself? Yeah. All right. Question number 2. So this one can be a little tricky because if you've just met or you're on a first date, I do think it's okay to ask it. It's just that you don't want to deep dive into it because a lot of times people don't feel comfortable talking about the past. And, that's not necessarily, especially on a first date, you don't want to be trying to dig into the past. So, but it is good to kind of pose the question of how they describe their relationship history. You don't have to say, how many people have you slept with? How many people have you dated? All of that stuff. You don't have to ask the specifics on a first date. But you could say, how do you describe your relationship history? And a lot of times, women will, they have a theme for it, like, learning and growing, or I've been through hell, or whatever. They'll give you information that is really like visual and descriptive about, what they have been through or what they have created, I should say, throughout their relationship history. Now, I'm not saying that you judge them for it, but if you want to get a good idea of how someone will show up in a relationship with you, see how they describe, what it's been. Have they been a victim of it? Has it been, one person after another who did them wrong? Or are they taking responsibility for it? Did they learn lessons? Do they have anything that, they feel like I learned? Or did they just like add to the list of red flags to look for? Because people who take responsibility, they learn lessons for how they need to be, how they need to show up. People who blame externally form a list of red flags for how other people need to show up. So I was with this guy and he didn't act right. So now the next guy is going to have to do this, this, and that. So that's somebody who hasn't learned a lesson. They've just added to their list of requirements, right? They've just added to how they blame externally. Someone who's learned a lesson is like, okay, so I was in this relationship. Who was I being to have attracted it? And how did I engage in it to have it be what it is? And how can I be different so I can attract something different, generate something different, and have a different experience? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I love that. Do you love that one? I think that's important for both genders, to be able to take that kind of responsibility. But I think that when you ask women the question about their relationship history, because we are such natural, wanting to talk about and share, it's just a very quick way to see whether she's in a space where she's willing to take responsibility for her experience. And that's
especially if you preface it by saying, look, I'm not looking for like deep specifics, just generally how what's your relationship history been like?
Yeah, totally. What's your overview? What's your flora and fauna? You don't have to tell me, like you said, not the deep specifics. I don't need to know how many dicks you sucked or anything like that. Right, we're not going there yet.
Relationship history.
Right. Exactly. So what are we on? Number 3. What does your ideal love life look like? So with this question, what's great about this is because a lot of times women don't give themselves the room to get clear and creative about this. So you're either going to get a lot of hesitation. I'm not sure. I haven't completely figured it out, which is not a bad thing. It's not something to judge or make wrong. It's just, maybe she hasn't really gotten clear on it. And it's just an indication of where she is on her journey as far as commitment is concerned. But we are also often so sure about what we don't want. And so when I ask the question, it's giving them an opportunity to get kind of creative and dreamy about what they do want. And I always encourage them to say, talk about what you do want, right? What it is that you're envisioning. So when you do that and you allow that safety bubble and a woman gets to share with you in that way, you get to see if you're kind of on the same page as far as your future visions. You get to see how attached she is to, whether somebody is or isn't the soulmate, or whether she actually just is dreaming a big picture, dreaming a big vision, being creative, being in her feminine energy around it, flowing around it. And you get to see if you align with it. Do you hear yourself in it? Sometimes I'll read the descriptions that clients put in their profile to someone I'm screening and say, do you hear yourself in this? Right? So if you ask her that question, what does your ideal love life look like? If you hear yourself in what she describes, and that's a pretty good sign. Right?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, and it also helps to understand like the lifestyle alignment thing. Like I said, core values and lifestyle. It helps you to understand if that alignment is there when you ask someone to create the vision. And then this next one is actually was one of the questions for men as well. But this is a good one to ask women because then you get to really get a sense of what she finds important. So I sent a couple daters out last night, and the guy was my client or is my client, and his thing was that she's not. He didn't get a sense that she was empathetic. And so, I'm thinking that he might have asked a similar question, but, if you want to get a sense of whether a woman is empathetic or loving, or, you want to ask her about what she loves. So what are you passionate about? You want to ask her about the things that she says she cares about and sort of how she frames those things. Like if she's got a couple kids and she's like, them damn kids, get on my, and I'm just not saying she doesn't love her kids. I'm not saying that, but then you get an idea of how she shows up for who she loves, right? Who she is when it comes to who she loves and how she expresses her caring about things. So you say, what are you passionate about? Not unlike when I ask men, this question is good for squeezing out more core value stuff. It's an invitation into feminine energy for a woman. The way a person talks about the things that they love is very revealing. especially if you're someone who wants to one day be a thing that she loves. So if you're talking to a woman that you're very attracted to externally, or there's other things that she's shown that you're very attracted to, asking her what she's passionate about, you get to get a sense of like who she is when she feels love for something. And is it, are there things that she, just takes a stance on? Maybe she has some political stances that she, takes a stand for. Is she, strong-willed? Is she, someone who's convicted about things? And if you're attracted to that sort of thing, you get to see that in, her talking about what she's passionate about, right? And then, of course, the most important question in everybody's mind, what do you prefer when it comes to physical appearance? So I ask women that just as much as I ask the men that, because it, like I said, it is an important thing. Unfortunately, we put the cart before the horse and we make it the important thing, which is why, most of us are just out there dating like bumblebees and not ever making anything stick. But yes, you should ask a woman what she prefers when it comes to physical appearance. 99.9% of the time, she'll say tall.
Yep.
Because that's where we go. And rarely do we care about much else. I mean, tall guys can get away with a whole lot. And about, I would say 60% say, fit, slender, or they'll take a dad bod over obesity. But for the most part, although women, I think we enjoy good-looking men, we're often afraid to rule out anyone, for fear of missing out on anyone. But if you're a guy who, wants to have a woman be attracted to you, ask her what she's attracted to. See if she describes, she might get real flirtatious and describe you for you. So, it's a nice question to ask just to see what she'll say. And she might even say she doesn't care about that sort of thing, that she wants to get to know a person for who they are. And that happens a lot. They'll say that and then they go for the physical. But on a date, you'll have a different experience because if you're asking that question, you get to open it up to, understanding what is her physical thing. And then the last one, politics and religion. Just like when I ask the men, the younger the person is, the more they're going to want to be right about whatever it is that they believe or espouse to when it comes to politics and religion. And they always say, in polite company, you don't talk about politics and religion. I don't necessarily think that that's true when it comes to dating, not because you should negate anybody because of difference in political opinions. And we talked about this last week as well. But when you ask this question, you don't necessarily have to ask the specifics about what they believe. It's just ask them if they have any hot button issues when it comes to politics and religion. You might be dating someone who is like a super devout Christian or a super fundamental Orthodox Jew or something like, which I guess you'll know based on the clothes, but somebody who really is steeped in their beliefs. And if you're not aligned with that, that's stuff that you want to know early, not so you can judge them, but you can, figure out if that's going to be workable or not, or how they view religion. Are they going to be expecting someone that they're with to go to church every Sunday? And you normally are scratching your butt and watching sports on Sundays, and that's not the judge. It's just a difference in lifestyle, right? So it is okay to kind of ask the question, do you have any strong beliefs, especially in these polarizing times when it comes to politics? Do you have any strong beliefs when it comes to religion? Did you ever do that, Brian? Like with Sasha, when you guys were first going out and stuff like that, did you have conversations around politics or religion early on? Did that ever come up?
Actually, when we first met, we spent about 2 weeks, or maybe even 3, just emailing each other. And we talked. We asked each other a lot of these questions.
Did you?
Through email, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And we both agreed that nothing was off the table.
Yeah. See, I was just going to say, emailing is its own safety bubble too, right? Like.
Absolutely.
Because then you're more willing to just really expound on things and really talk about it when you get asked a question.
Well, I think both of us didn't want to waste any time either.
Did you? You're like, are you going to be right for me or not?
Exactly. Okay.
Let's figure this out. So yeah, and and with this one, it's just you don't have to ask them who they voted for or specifically what their religion is or what they think about religion. Just do they have anything that is a hard stance? Do they have anything that is would be considered a strong belief or that they're really extremely committed to? That's the most important thing, because you want to know that stuff going in, because if there's going to be an expectation that you are extremely committed as well, you got to think about that. I love that you and Sasha did that. And were you as you were going through that process, were you delightfully learning that you were aligned in a way that you didn't expect?
Absolutely. I think that was the most shocking thing. And that when we met each other was just like icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Because we both found each other attractive, and that was and we had done all the work.
Yeah.
We had done the heavy lifting before then, so we could just get to know each other even more and more after that point.
See, that makes my heart swell, because I love that sort of thing. And yes, y'all are both cute, so it doesn't surprise me that you, but you know what I mean? That's it. That's the secret sauce. That willingness to, and whether it's digitally or face to face or whatever, it's just that willingness to just have those conversations to get to that point where you, and here's the thing, y'all are both cute, but I think probably because you had that, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that basis of some conversation back and forth, there was also maybe a built-in sense of this person is already attractive to me on a level. And then if they're physically attractive as well, it's just going to push it over the top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We knew generally how we looked because we had exchanged,
the pictures and stuff
like that.
Yeah.
But, it was okay, if this person looks as good as they do in the pictures, it's on and popping.
It's on.
If they were 50 years older or something like that, or 50 pounds heavier, then that might be a little problem.
Yeah.
But it was good. It worked out. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So that, that's it. It's just that willingness to take the time, ask the questions, get to know a person, begin the practice of having what would be considered maybe a hard conversation or a conversation about something that seems like it's deep, because that's the whole point. You're in relationship with someone, and that's what you're practicing to do. And it's amazing to me how many people are unwilling to do that. And I think that's why there's so many people that are not just yes, there's so many people that are single, and like I said, single is not a pejorative, but single and unhappy. If you're single and unsatisfied and hating dating and, feeling like it's a process that you don't want to have to deal with, you don't want to have to go through in order to be in a relationship, then you're missing the point of all of it, because it's all just practice for the long game. It's all just preparation for allowing intimacy and getting to know a person, and, being able to have conversations that wouldn't necessarily be easy to have with a stranger, being able to just talk about that deep stuff and being willing to deep dive with a person, ask them real questions that really cause connection. And it can be scary because there's a lot of vulnerability involved in it, especially if you're someone who has a lot of judgment around your own past and, whether you've healed your past. I always say, with my coaching program, I say, heal your past, love yourself, and start your love life over from a clean slate. So, a regular practice of that makes dating a lot easier, because as you're healing more and more, as you're loving yourself more and more, you're more willing to share yourself. And the more you're willing to just clean the slate from whatever happened in the past, whatever you've been through, whatever conditioning, trauma, and all of that stuff, the more willing we are to just engage in the moment and see where it can go. Don't you agree, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Practice. It's practice. So that's part 2, queries to ask women on early dates. Remember to create the safety bubble and just enjoy the process of getting to know people. And just because someone doesn't immediately seem like a soulmate, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy getting to know them. And like I said, practice, practice, practice. The more adept we become at dating, the closer we get to being relationship ready. Find your flow, people. Just find your flow. Enjoy each other. So let's do a matchmaker moment. You want to do a matchmaker moment, Brian?
Yeah.
Yay, matchmaker moments.
Woo. All right, matchmaker moment.
Woo-hoo! So tonight's client profile is a beautiful 44-year-old marketing exec with a lithe yoga body, very self-aware and feminine. She's looking for a partner who wants to have outdoor adventures. She wants a weekend warrior type, like somebody who wants to get out there and paddleboard and whitewater raft and jump out of it. Yeah, she wants to get out there and, be active and adventurous. She wants someone whose time is flexible and has a financially free mindset. And the reason I put that like that is that, financially free mindset is not necessarily about the amount of money that you have in the bank. It's about where you put your money, how you view money, like we talked about, what your relationship is with money. And, if you value a weekend warrior kind of life, that's probably where you're putting your discretionary income. So, you have to have sort of a free mindset around, being able to put money into your adventure and enjoyment in order to align with her, because that's what she does. She's looking for someone who laughs a lot, doesn't take life too seriously, very much her as well. She definitely laughs a lot. And she's in Miami. Benvenuto a Miami. Culturally Muslim, but considers herself to be spiritual. So if you're out there and you consider yourself to be spiritual, she's open to all different religions as long as you have some sort of faith or belief in God. Or if you know someone who might be a great match, you can email me, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com, and say, I want to be matched with this beautiful yogi. And that's our matchmaker moment. Woohoo! All right. So also, right? It's good stuff. So also every Monday night, I do the Epic Circle. It's an online healing circle for women everywhere. We come together as a community, cause personal transformation when it comes to communication, forgiveness, self-love, mother-daughter relationships, purpose, friendships, all the tools we need to be as big as we were meant to be. And we just ended our last 24-week program. We just started a new one. Collective 2 is our new cycle. It began on the 21st, but you can join at any time. And your first class is considered an orientation class, so your first class is free. Go to Meetup and find the Epic Circle. If you are a woman who's looking for a healing community, if you want to heal your past, love yourself, start your love life over from a clean slate, go find us on Meetup. Go to the Epic Circle. You'll get information and links for how you can join us on Monday night, become a member. And thank you so much to my broadcasting partner, Brian from Solivity Magazine. Yes, Passion, Purpose, Living.
I love it, love it, love it.
You do?
So much fun.
I know, right? I feel like I did most of the talking this time around because I had so much to say and so much fire hosing. But I love it when you engage and jump in and add the male perspective. Tonight I talked a lot, though. I feel like I was filling it up. I'm out here on my rooftop, my virtual rooftop with the Chrysler Building. Yes, thank you so much, Brian. I'm excited. I'm excited about next week. Next week is going to be all about flow, finding your flow, honey. And I'm not going to go into the details of that because there's a lot around that, the flow. We're going to even be talking about bodily functions, which I know, but we're talking about flow next week.
I love it.
Right?
Hustle and flow.
Hustle and flow. Follow us on Instagram at Ask for Candy Podcast, at Candy Love Coach, at Solivity Magazine. And I think that's it. And email me, yes, askforcandypodcast@gmail. I think I said that before. But until next time, never forget that you are a love machine. If you ever start to feel like you aren't getting the love you need, just make more and ask for candy. I love you guys. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye now.
I call my sugar